Now, as you think about this from the perspective of the entrepreneur, and now let's take the controversial questions because we do get some of these as well. The hard charging entrepreneur who has sacrificed a lot of time with their family, who is less pliable in understanding the needs of their employees, and their perspective is very business oriented, numbers oriented, and they have it in their mind that the bottom line is I have a business to run, I have shareholders that I'm responsible to. I recognize you have challenges, but they're not my problems. I hired you to do a job. You're here to help me meet my numbers. End of story. I'm sure you run into people like this.
Sure.
How do you help shift or soften that mindset? Or maybe that's the wrong way to position it. How do you help them to understand that it is about the numbers and that by being more flexible and being more pliable, you're actually helping your business? This isn't an either or proposition.
I think that's you've hit the nail on the head there at the end with what you said there. I think if you're an entrepreneur running a business and you've got to meet numbers, you're stressed. You've got shareholders to appease. I get it. I get that it's tough, and you need bums in seats because they've got to be working hard. And you've got somebody here who's saying, actually, my kid is sick, or actually, I've got to be off work today, or I think as an entrepreneur, you've got to think outside the box. Give that flexibility. If a parent says to you, actually, you know what, I need to log off at 3 o'clock, but I'm happy to log back in at 8 o'clock and work till midnight. What's the issue for you if they get their work done? Ultimately, what you want is your employees to get the work they have been set done. When they do it, or even we can go as far as where they do it from. I think is irrelevant. Yes, of course, there are some businesses that are different. You've got hands-on jobs, more manual jobs. You've got to be on site. I get that, but other roles where you're sitting at a desk, why does that desk have to be in an office? That desk can be anywhere. And I think entrepreneurs have to think a bit beyond, supporting your employees is actually good for your business. The research is showing that the more you give your employees, the more their productivity increases. Because if your employees feel like you care about them as human beings and you treat them as people rather than employees, they're much more likely to go the extra mile for you when you need it. So when shit hits the fan and you've got a big project and you need your team rallied around, they're going to remember how you treated them. They're going to remember whether you gave them the flexibility that they needed. And if you did, and if you were a good leader and a good manager, you can almost guarantee that the majority of them will be at that in that room with you until 2 o'clock in the morning working on that project because you gave it to them. So I think, we've got to see it as sustainable thinking and long term thinking. Yes, your business needs crunch right now and you need people to work hard. But I think if you invest in your people, if you invest in those people that work for you, when the time comes, they're going to be there when you need them.
Now, one of the other trends that we see is almost the business community talking out of two sides of its mouth. On the one hand, there are many who look at the strategy of their businesses, they look to the future, they're actually concerned about the fact that more families are not having kids, that the demographic numbers in their countries, their target markets are not looking that good. And so you hear out of one side a desire to incentivize family formation and have more children, or if you have one, let's go for two. And then out of the other side, it is this lack of flexibility to enable that from happening. So, what I'm curious about from your seat and your experience is, um, do you feel that parents who are putting off that decision about whether to have the second or third child, that it is primarily driven by that lack of flexibility in their professional life? Or are there other factors beyond that that are underlying those demographic challenges? This is just one of many. What role do you think the corporate world has in causing the very problems that they're worried about?
I think it's a combination of both of those things. I think there is a genuine concern from parents. A lot of parents are now having children later. They want to establish themselves more at their workplace, and they still feel that stigma still exists. That if I have a child now, I'm going to be held back. Especially women. I go on maternity leave. The men are going to keep getting promotions, and here I am, almost starting over when I come back. And I see this with my wife. We've had our third child, and yes, I run my business, and she also runs a business as well. But it's not at a stage where she can afford to stop working, sadly. But she's put her career on pretty much on hold. She's gone back part time, and she's worried about what that says about her. She's worried about what her managers and think about her in terms of her commitment to her job. So I think there is a genuine fear that people have that actually the more children I have, are my employers going to take me seriously? Are they going to say to me, you're taking the Mickey now. You need to leave. But I think there are other factors as well. I mean, gosh, the cost of living, the cost of children is just huge. The cost of childcare in certainly in the Western world, and I would assume in other parts of the world as well. You mentioned it earlier. Yes, some of us have the luxury of having extended family around where we can, leave children and they can spend some time with them, but many of us don't. And so we have to invest in childcare. And having a childcare is like, sometimes it's more than your rent or your mortgage. It's crazy. So I think there are various factors that are playing a role in this kind of reduced birth rate that we're seeing in many parts of the world, and it's driven by, I think, a lack of flexibility in many workplaces. I think it's driven by that stigma and that fear of what your managers are going to think about you for having two or three children. I think it's that fear of if I have children, I can't pursue my career. I'm going to be held back. I don't want to wait till I'm 40. I want that promotion now. And I think it's also that fear of just how expensive children are in relation to just how expensive life is in lots of areas in the world.